Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. This is Whitney Wiley, bad on the tech today. And we are here on Thursdays, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, talking all things leadership. And I never claimed to be a tech expert. So I'm just saying,
Mm.
right? Leadership, some HR things, coaching, not technology. I'm just saying. Right? So we are here today. We're going to be talking about retention, employee retention, and the title of our program today is From Turnover to Tenure. Mastering employee retention. And we're going to do a two-parter. So we are not going to feel pressured to get through all the material today. And we're going to talk about a number of things. And one of them comes from a report from A Great Place to Work, the organization called A Great Place to Work. And they've done a report called Unlocking the Secrets of Employee Retention. And so we're going to talk about some of the findings that are in that. And this stems from an assignment, actually, that my course had. The students in the course had, where they did a profile on a company that's one of the top companies. It annually rates as one of the top companies to work for. And I thought, they're doing this research and studying this. I'm not going to mention the company and some of the findings or the university, so you don't track down any of the things that the students said. But I'm teaching actually a new course this term, and so it is an undergraduate course in business, and this is one of the assignments that they had. So they did this profile on a company. It's annually rated very high. It's one of the best companies to work for. And I just thought it was an interesting topic for us to talk about. And we talk about various aspects of this week to week, right? And our whole premise is that if you are leading well, it's going to lead to employee retention, right? That your goal as a leader is to create an environment that your employees are thriving in, that they want to be a part of. And so we're going to talk specifically today, though, about the things that this report said were important. Again, there are things that we've talked about in the past, but we're going to get into it a little bit today and next week. And then I just want to give a heads up. While our episodes are meant to be evergreen, we are actually going to take some time off. We're going to practice what we preach, which is around self-care. And we're going to take the month of August off. And then we'll be back in September to start the next season of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. And we'll unveil what that will look like later. But for now, any opening thoughts on what we're going to be talking about today?
You know, this is one of those situations where we talked about this because we have our meeting on Sunday. And as I was reading the articles that you sent over, I felt like I was one of your students. I was like, oh, these articles, these articles. So many stories were coming into my head, popping into my head from experiences I had. And one of them was about an organization I worked with that wanted to become one of the best places to work. And I have oodles of stories that I'm going to share. It's going to be
kind of good. And that's good, because I don't know that I've ever worked for any place that it has really wanted that, I would say that I have worked, I want to say this, I have worked at some places that I have enjoyed working immensely
Yeah.
until my very last work experience. I had never been anywhere more than 3 years.
Right.
And the 3 years that I was in, for the place that I was in 3 years, it it was then and remains to this day one of the best work experiences I've ever had. And I will say this, it was, I think some of it is because it was very similar to what I'm doing now.
Mhm.
And I had the kind of autonomy and relationship with my employers that created that. So in that situation, I did not work for myself, but they left me to do what they hired me to do, right? They provided the resources and tools that I needed. They were there for support, but they really just gave me the freedom to do and create what I wanted to within the parameters of what it is they were trying to achieve, right? They had a mission and a vision and said, whatever you want to do that will get us there, we give you freedom and authority and the autonomy to do. And so, in that respect, is very much like what I'm doing now. And what I know is that for myself, having the awareness that I have about how I thrive, that's good for me. In other situations where there were different aspects of how I did or did not enjoy the job, there were other things that came up, and community would have been one of those things. So even in jobs where I didn't necessarily enjoy the work I was doing, the environment in other respects, and that's one of the things that is one of the factors that comes up about retention, right? Is community and the people that you work with. And so having that be a part of where I was, I I would say sort of offset some of the things that were not so great about the job, that the people that I worked with, the community that we built, the that it was fun, right? And I think that's the way it's phrased um in the report, is that fun is a factor. It's one of the drivers of retention, and I had fun working there. And so, um, and that was a theme that occurred in a number of different places.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I have that. I have two devices. Well, I have my computer, of course, and then I have my phone, which has the article on it, and I won't be able to read all of it, but I wanted to keep it handy because there were some things that stood out for me. I didn't want to print everything. This is a rather large article. But the thing that really stood out were one of the things that you mentioned. It said, purpose, pride, and fun.
Yeah.
People want to work for organizations where they feel that they have a sense of purpose. Is that what they're doing is it's connecting to their purpose, and that their job is greater than just stacking widgets or whatever it is that they're doing. They want to see that it's having an impact in the environment and the community around that organization. So sense of purpose was huge. Pride factors into that, being proud to be part of this organization, and community factors into that as well. Really having a sense of pride that you can tell somebody that you work for this organization and feel good about it. Not like I'm telling you, somebody asks you where you work and you're like, well, I work at, you want to tell them because you can't, it's not connected to your purpose, or they're having they're detrimentally impacting the environment, or doing something that's controversial. I mean, how many people that used to work at Enron probably just leave that off their resume when they're applying for a new job? But, having pride in where you work is a huge factor, and fun. And oddly enough, this is a thing I think that trips up a lot of people. I had fun at every, you know me personally, right? So you know that I am a crazy person, you know, wacky. So I like to have fun when I do my job. But I've worked with managers that didn't like the fact that I would show up and have this sense of joy about my job. They thought, you know, if they came in and they put their head down and they were sour all day, then they wanted everybody else to come in, put their head down, and be sour all day. And that's just not my personality. I do have times when I am sour, and I try to get myself out of that.
No.
Yes. but I try to get myself out of that. But there are some people, they're like, you know, work. And I remember having a conversation with a former manager about, you know, me enjoying my job. And he goes, well, it shouldn't be enjoyable. That's why they call it work. And I laughed in his face. I was like, the reason why I'm able to do a good job, and you think that I do a good job, is because I enjoy what I do. It's fun for me. And so maybe his job wasn't fun for him. Not my problem.
You know, and so you bring up purpose, right? And the three keys were purpose, pride, and fun. And it's interesting because I think when people think of purpose in their jobs, that their jobs are meaningful, that it has to be like that grand, my purpose in life concept. And it doesn't have to be that at all. I will share a couple of examples. One, and this was not one of my favorite jobs, the work itself. So I waited tables. And after I had gone through a divorce, I waited tables because at that time I had not finished school. I hadn't completed school. I didn't really have any real marketable skills, and I was in a situation where I needed a job. And so someone that I know worked at a restaurant, and they talked to the general manager, and the general manager was like, yeah, sure, we need help, she can come and do this. And I needed a job. I will say this, that the fact that I walked home with tips every day, had cash in my pocket every day, was a great thing, right? So there, and every job you have, there are different things that are the positives and the negatives. Certainly, one of the positives was that I had money every day. The other thing was that I had, and I was older than most of the wait staff at the time, because I had been, I was just older. I'll leave it like that. Pretty much everyone else was just beyond 21, old enough to serve alcohol. In California, you need to be 21 to serve alcohol. So everyone was just 21. They were in college, and it was their play money, right? That was rent money for me, right? It was the money that I was living on. So I was taking the job a little more seriously than everyone else, which it was a double-edged sword. So the fact that everyone else was sort of lighthearted about the job was the part that made the work fun, right? And so we became a community. Everyone was helping others as it related to, you know, making sure that meals got out and helping each other in that respect. But I was taking it a little more seriously because I was depending on that money for my livelihood at the time.
Absolutely.
And so that aspect made me, and my nature, where I want things to be a particular way. I want them to be exceptional, right? I want excellence from and I expect excellence from myself and other people. Truth be told, found this out later, I'm actually a perfectionist. Shh, don't tell anybody. Yeah. Don't tell anybody. A little bit of a perfectionist, and I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Yeah.
I didn't realize at the time that I was a perfectionist. I just thought I had high standards and exception and whatnot. But through some assessments and other things and some coaching, I found out I'm actually a perfectionist. So it created some problems for me in that job.
Sure.
But the other parts of why I stayed as long as I did there was because of these three factors, right? Purpose. I had a purpose, one. So the work itself had purpose and meaning for me personally. But it also, I was able to create experiences for people, right? So my work had meaning in that I was able to create experiences for people that I had some semblance of control over, which I think is another part of this, maybe not articulated, but when we have meaningful work and purposeful work, and we are able to have some semblance of control over that, right, it plays into it. So the meaning doesn't necessarily, serving food, right, to people may, or waiting, and let me put it this way, waiting tables may not seem like meaningful work, but if you look at it in a different context, right, it can be meaningful. And then the other story, and I think I've shared this before, I was a member at a church, and I was we were doing some rebranding of volunteering to what they called partners. And so we were creating this program and bringing on new partners to be a part of serving at the church. And I just remember very explicitly having a conversation with the pastor who was over the partner program. And he was talking about the challenge that had been had in finding volunteers or partners to work in the nursery, and that people would push back, and they were like, well, I don't know if I'm made for this. I don't know that I want to be around babies and the youngest of the children. And he reframed it, right? And so we always have an opportunity to reframe things. And he explained it that they're not babysitting, that they're impacting little lives, right? And if you just reframe what you're doing and find something that resonates with you, right, it can make all the difference. And that is one of the things that I think it's important for leaders to do. That's part of your role, right? It's part of your purpose is to know your employees, understand what's important to them, what their goals are, and then help them make those connections so that they feel like the work that they're doing is meaningful, regardless of what the nature of the work is, from the top to the bottom in your organization, that everyone should feel like the work that they're doing matters to the company, it matters to your clients, your customers, your constituents, and that you're not just the receptionist, right? You are not just someone in the mailroom. But what does that mean to the efficient running of the organization, and help them feel like they matter? You could help them feel like they matter regardless of what the title is. And I know I talked for a long time, so.
No, it's fine. It's interesting because you bring up so many different things, and one of the things that pops up, we're talking about why this is good to having these things helps retain your talent, but it also helps attract the talent, because you want to make sure that when you're doing this stuff, you're branding your organization in a way that whatever you're doing internally radiates outwardly. And a lot of times when you were talking, I was thinking about how organizations take these things for granted, right? Certainly, I remember I worked in an organization and we did healthcare. As far as I'll say, I'm not going to look at you smiling already because you pretty much have heard most of these stories. And I remember the CEO talking about one of the providers there and how he had a great experience every time he went to that provider because we got our healthcare inside of that organization as well. But the people below the CEO did not have that same experience because they weren't the CEO. But it was his perception of that and person probably was a very good doctor. I didn't see this person, other people did, and he had mixed reviews. But the real purpose of this is, when you drill down, you have to find out what your employees think about the organization. It's not what you as the leader, because your experience is going to be most likely very different than the people that are following you. And I remember, and that's number one. Number two is you cannot will your organization into being one of the best places to work.
Right.
If you don't have all the pieces, if your organization has no sense of, you don't let people connect to their purpose, if people aren't really proud of where they work and you're not instilling that in them and building that up, and your job is not fun, you can't say, you know what, we should become one of the best places to work. That's happened in organizations that I worked in.
I'm sure.
And so since I had my function, I was the OD specialist and I worked in HR. I was the one that was in charge of moving this thing along because we had somebody that said, hey, I want to see if we can do this and become one of the best places to work. And I will say this, I think I would like to say that the person that wanted to do this was doing it for the right reason, but I think they just wanted a feather in their cap. And so in order to do this, you had to do these surveys. So surveying the population, the employees in the organization, and then you get the surveys, and then you look at them and you see what you're missing and what you're doing well. And that way you build on those things so that you can become one of the best places to work. And I remember I was the one that was in charge of doing these surveys, sending these surveys out. People would not, they were afraid that this, even though these were anonymous surveys and we were not tabulated, and they were getting sent to a third person to do that. They were afraid that there would be some kind of identifying factor in the survey that would allow their answers to be tracked back to them. That became my focal point when I went back to this person that if they won't even do the survey. If I were you, I would start there and try to find out why people do not trust the organization enough to even do an anonymous survey. But that was, they didn't want to do that. They were afraid of the answers that they were going to get, and it just faded away. So you cannot will yourself into being one of the best places to work. You have to actually listen to your employees. And if there's a problem, if they won't even fill out the survey, so you can start looking at the things that you need to work on and what you're doing well, then you need to start there, right?
Right.
No trust. There was no trust in the leadership there. And that led into other things. They were comfortable telling, the employees were comfortable telling me these things, and I relayed them, but they felt that they were going to be punished if they said that the organization didn't do certain things well. And I went back and I went to this leader and said, this is a really big red flag that you need to look at and find out why people feel this way. And, unfortunately, even if they tried to get that information, people probably wouldn't have felt comfortable giving that information.
Right.
That's a real systemic problem that some organizations face when they try to do this.
You bring up this concept of trust, and I think a lot of organizations or leaders in organizations would ask the question, what do you mean by trust, or trust what? And so that there are a number of things that employees feel that they need to be able to trust, right? That they can share feedback, that they can share confidential feedback, that they won't be retaliated if they say something, that they can offer, that they can be candid in their communications, that that they trust that they will be cared for, valued, right? One of the huge issues in the workforce right now is around mental health, and feeling like you can share, maybe not the every detail about what you're going through, but that you are going through something and that it's not going to be used against you, right? That you're not going to be labeled or castigated as being lazy, or oh, they just don't want to work. And if that is your response, right, you are communicating to your employees that you don't care about them, that you don't value them. And if they can't trust that you're doing that, they're not going to trust you with what they're going through. And if they can't get that, then they'll go somewhere else where they can. Right. And I think through one of the lessons, and there are lots of lessons, but certainly one of the lessons that we learned over the course of the last 4 years is that more and more employees feel empowered wherever this has come from, but they feel empowered to be in alignment with their values. And that may not have been the case in prior generations or prior work time frames, right? Regardless of the generation, but more and more people feel like these are the values that I have. I want to live in alignment with those values. I want to work in alignment with those values. And if I can't, I'm going to take what I have to offer, right? The skills, the talent, my drive, my motivation. I'm going to take all that somewhere else where it will be valued and appreciated. And we're this is a sea change, right? We're in a continuing sea change, and it's going to require that there be some adjustments. That old, if they don't like it, they can go work somewhere else. I've worked for those people. They don't like the way we're doing it here. They can go work somewhere else. They can, and they will. But why would you want that if you've got someone who is a good worker? And the point of retention is that turnover is costly, right? And it's like in marketing, acquiring new customers, it is more costly to get new customers than it is to keep your current customers. And it's the same for your workforce. And that means that you need to be in touch with what matters, and be willing to make some adjustments. And what I have seen from employees over the course of my extensive work life, no matter the company, the type of entity. I've worked for government, I've worked for private companies, I've worked for public companies, I've worked for nonprofits, right? And I have sat on boards and commissions and all types of entities. And you want loyalty, you've got to give people a reason to be loyal, right? You have to give them a reason. And if you don't, then they won't.
Yeah. And it's one of the, it comes back to something I think that I said earlier. Just because this is one of the best places that you've worked in doesn't make it the best place to work in for other people. And especially like you said with the generations. I was really struck by the article and what it said about what anchors Gen Z to their workplace. And these are things that we've talked about. My work is meaningful. These are questions they asked on surveys. My work is meaningful. And 2.5 times, they will stay more 2.5 times more. I'm proud of where I work. The younger generations, they want to be proud of where they work, especially when it comes to environmental impact. That's something that Gen Z are really, they're really passionate about. They want to make sure that there's a connection to that. Climate change, that's a big thing that they're worried about.
Yeah.
What's this other question here? I feel I make an impact at work. We talked about that. I don't think that's limited to just generations, but they really want to make sure that they make an impact. They just don't want to sit there and just, I'm stamping this thing over and over again. It just does nothing for the organization or anybody else. It's just busy work. They want to make sure that they're feeding the mission of the organization. And there's more of it. I won't.
Before you move away from that, I just want to make this point, because this is one of the things that I hear when I'm training employers, the managers who are in these trainings, and their concern about Gen Z is that they want to come in and be at the top. Mm-hmm. And I push back and say, I don't think it's so much that they want to be at the top, but they want to feel like what they're doing matters. And so if you can help them make the connection between what they're doing and how that is having an impact on the organization and the population that you serve, it's not that and they may have aspirations to be CEO or be a manager or, a supervisor, manager, upper manager, leadership directors, whatever the titles are. They may have aspirations for that, but it's not so much that they come in day one and they want to be in charge. They want to feel like they are making a difference, that they're having an impact. And so if stamping widgets help them make the connection of what that means and the impact that it's having for the population that you're serving, right? Your clients, your customers, your constituents. If you can do that and then help them see a path forward to where they want to go and how at each step they're going to be able to make more and more impact, that's how you bridge that gap. And instead of saying, oh, they just want to be in charge, get to the bottom of what it is they really want. And so it may come across as wanting to be in charge, but I think not just in this report, but others and other articles that we've talked about and read, this is a recurring thing.
And look, they may come in and want to be in charge, right? They may.
Yes, they may.
Show them what they need to do in order
how to get there.
And give them a roundabout, and give them a roundabout time frame for when it might happen. It may not happen in 2 years. It may happen in 10, and that's not right for you. Then maybe this isn't the organization for you. But at least you're having the conversation. And you're allowing them to see okay, you want to be in charge? This is what I need to see. This is what you need to do. And I think that some leaders just get offended if that happens.
Exactly.
I remember, and this is really funny because one of my mentees, when I first met him, this is before I put a program together that help those folks, with their career paths. So he was like a frontline staff person, and he was going to school. He had his bachelor's in, I think it was human resources management. And I remember when I first met him, I asked him, well, what exactly do you do? What exactly do you do? He told me his job. I said, well, what do you want to do? Because I want your job. And I laughed. Right? I was like, well, first of all, the confidence that this person showed, I would have. I could see why somebody would be put off by that, but I laughed. I thought it was funny. And I said, well, okay, let's see what we can do to help you get to a place where you could have my job. And we actually, this is before he became my mentee. I remember thinking, wow, this guy is kind of cocky and it's kind of funny to me. But he ended up becoming somebody who actually moved up in the organization because he had that drive. And
Yeah.
one of the conversations that we had was like, you want to appear a lot humbler, more humble than what you appear sometimes, because other people may have been put off by that. I just thought it was humorous and funny. But, we had the conversation. Why did you say that? Where do you want to go? Here's what you need to do to move in this direction, if that's what you want to do. And he's doing very well now. He's moved to a different company. He's worked with actually for several companies, and he's doing very well in his career. And it was just a question of having that conversation and finding out why he said that, where he wanted to be, and then telling him, well, here's what you need to do, right? This is
Exactly.
this is move you in that direction. And hey, by the
Exactly.
way, you might not want to say that with every executive you meet. And that's when the real mentor mentee relationship started. But I did want to say the other thing here. I don't want to read the entire list because I think it's really interesting, and some of the things that we talked about already. But this one struck me. I'm proud of my company's achievements. Gen Z really want to feel that they are, and there are, and like I said, this is not exclusive to Gen Z, but these are the things that are most impactful to them. And as you mentioned before, that's the generation that's coming up. That's the generation that's going to be populating the workplace. Those are the folks that are coming up right now. We are, like you said, in a seat change. They're going to be taking those seats. And it's important to know the things that motivate and drive them. And they want to be proud of the organization that they're working for, and they want to be proud of the achievements of the organization.
I think that is the key, and how one of the ways I want to tie this back to simple, our principle, right, which is leveraging their motivation. In order to do that, you've got to get curious about what it is that you're so right. People don't always say things, either the right thing or say the thing the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And while that young man, maybe the way he was communicating what he wanted was off-putting, or it was annoying, not your word, but for other people, that's the sense that I get in the trainings that I have, that people are annoyed with Gen Z, that they just want to go immediately to the top, and they're seeing it as an all or nothing rather than an opportunity to mentor and educate young people that there could be a better way to communicate what it is they want. They're up and coming. They don't know everything. And I'll just say this, when I was their age, I'm not a Gen Z, but when I was the age of a Gen Z, I thought I knew everything. Right? I didn't want to hear it from my parents and some others. So put yourself back in the mindset of someone of that age, regardless of what's going on generationally. Put yourself in the shoes of someone in that, and think about how you didn't always say things the right way or the right thing. And then get curious, because you are, for the most part, in the position of leadership, you are someone who's supposed to be more emotionally intelligent, right? And your job is to help these people be the same, to become more emotionally intelligent, to mature in their communication. And it's not to change them, but to help them, right, be the best versions of themselves as they're moving through, the journey of their career. And the way that you're going to do that is start by getting curious. Instead of being annoyed, instead of being, put off, be curious, ask questions, help them understand, right, what it is they need to understand so that they can reach their goals and leverage what's motivating them, or what's driving them, what they want. Leverage that to get the work done, to create bonds and teams and and the things that we're talking about here, right? The purpose and the fun and the what was the purpose,
Purpose,
pride,
fun.
and fun.
Yeah. It's very interesting because at the time when this happened, when this person said this to me, I wasn't thinking, let's harness this this cockiness. But I remembered, it was his confidence made such an impression on me that later on, uh, his name came up. His when I wanted to do something, I said, that person is probably going to be really good for this because he's got a lot of confidence. I was able to, have that conversation with him, and he ended up being a very valuable asset to the organization.
So let me say this: if you had us at the time, if you had been listening to us, you would have thought of harnessing that,
Absolutely.
right? That the advantage that our audience has of watching and listening.
Absolutely. It's funny because at the time I don't think I even knew you. No, this is way before that. I didn't know. Let me think about this. No, I didn't know you at the time. So this is before we met. I was doing things a little bit differently. And I remember, thinking about this, when he said that, I was like, I laughed at it. At first I was a little bit taken aback by it. Then I laughed at it, and then I said, yeah, I probably would have said something like that when I was his age too. You couldn't tell me nothing. I knew everything. But as you get older, as I got older, I realized there are volumes and volumes of things that I don't know. And it becomes one of these things where you have to balance things out, where you leverage, like you're saying, the things that drives you, the things you're good at, the things you see in other people. Man, if we had simple back then, I would have been like, oh, this is going to be really easy to plug into and help this person reach their potential. But I didn't have that. I just had to use, my curiosity to unpack what it was that this person wanted to do with their career, and now they're doing it and having a great time. So maybe I may think about getting this person on the show. So now that we're talking about him,
that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Bring in the show.
So, before we wrap up today, and we did say this was going to be a two-parter, I touched on this concept, and you brought this up, right? That before you can get to retention, you have to recruit. You have to bring people on board. And the reason that retention is so important is because turnover is costly. And just some of the data that comes from the report is that in these, I have a class that I train that is about recruitment and interviewing and onboarding, right? And we don't quite get to the retention piece, but we're talking about the piece of bringing people on and how that process actually sets the company and the new employee, the new hire, up for ultimately retention. And you mentioned brand. What is your company brand? What are your values? What's your vision, your mission? What are you communicating to the world and to potential employees that makes them want to come work for you, right? And so there's going to be that piece that makes them want to come work for you, and then you have to be true to that for them to want to stay, right? And if you can do more hiring, not of people just because you have a vacancy, they need a job, hire someone, but having people who are more in alignment, right, from the get-go, it will actually make the job of retention a little bit easier. So the numbers are that this was saying that at any given time, over half of employees are open to quitting. Right, over half of your employees are open to quitting. Not in this report. Some stats that I have from my training is that when you have new hires coming on board, about a third of them are looking for a new job within 6 months. About a third within 6 months. That is if they ever stopped looking at all. Right? Some people, they don't stop looking, they're constantly looking because they're not sure that it's going to work out. So they keep looking. But if they come on and there's a disconnect, there's a mismatch between what they thought they were getting based on what you told them in the recruiting process and the interviews and the onboarding, those early days of working for you, if there's a mismatch, it's going to create a situation where they're going to want to go. And ultimately, what you're looking to do with the purpose, the pride, and the fun is create an emotional connection and bond to the company, the people that they work with. It's a concept called embeddedness. And you create this embeddedness so that people feel like, if I stop working here, I'm going to miss out on something. I'm going to lose something. And so I want to stay here. And next week, we can talk about some of the things that you'll want to do, like in terms of development and other areas that you want to make investments. Because if I can see myself here, right, talking about leverage and tapping into someone's motivation to have your job, if they can see themselves in your organization, you start creating that emotional connection so that they're like, okay, I can plot out a path. And young Gen Z, probably, Gen Y, are looking for opportunities at the next place because they don't see themselves where they are. Right. So if I have to leave here in order to get to the next level, right, to move not just in a ladder for a 1 or 2 and a senior, but to a manager or a senior manager or into a director position, if I have to leave and go to another organization in order to do that, I'm going to do that. If you can help them see a path forward, that's how, not in the same position, right? It's not about keeping them in the same position. It's about the value that they bring, of making assumptions that they are good, productive employees for you, right? That if there's somewhere else that they can go, that they're going to continue to bring that in every position that they're in.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, next week we'll continue this conversation. We'll get into some of the specific leadership things that you can do, right? As it relates to you specifically as a leader, what are some of the things that you can do? We talked about the 3 main drivers for employee retention, but you as a leader have a huge part to play in that. And your behaviors, the things that you do to create the environment, go a long way towards whether or not people will stay. And so what we want to do is to help you not be the reason that people are leaving your organization, right? People don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. Don't be that boss, right? That's what we want for you, not to be that boss. And so we'll continue this conversation next week. But in the meantime, Robert, if someone wanted to talk with you, right, about what they could do to help retain employees or to grow in their careers, how would they go about doing that?
They can reach me at inspire me at roberthilliardcoaching.com, or they can just go to the website, Robert Hilliard Coaching. I do have a contact form there. Fill that out, and it'll ask you Why do you want to talk to me? Why do you want to reach out to me? Let me know what goals you have, what challenges you're experiencing, and we'll set up a time when we can talk and see if we're a good match for each other and how I can possibly help you.
Amazing. But then you are. So
So
if you'd like to connect with me, you can do so by going to shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site, and there's a contact form there as well as a couple of gifts from me to you. If you'd like to have an ebook that talks about purpose in your work, or being a better boss, balance, those resources are available for you there. So until next time, and we will continue this conversation with part 2 of what you can do to master employee retention. Until next time, take care.
bye now.